Okay, here we are. Welcome, everybody. Any of you who happen to be watching, who would tune in, it's really awesome that you're here with us, with Chrissy Sawyer and I. Chrissy is on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean in England, in Great Britain. And I'm sitting here in the middle of the United States in St. Louis, and technology is amazing. So do any of you fellow expressions of spirit incarnate that want to be with us, just welcome. Chrissy, how are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm really well, thank you. It's great to see you again. It's been a long while. And thank you for welcoming me to your channel. I've loved the stuff that you're sharing. The Christmas stories were proper cup of tea, get comfy in a chair, kind of. I don't know if we're hardwired to have stories read to us, but I find them very comforting, and the way that your words paint pictures, thoroughly enjoyed them. More, please.
Well, I appreciate that. Something that interesting happened with those stories, that not a big deal. Nothing in my life is that big of a deal, except it's all a very big deal. One of my former students from many years ago, oh gosh, it's probably been 15 years ago now. After the third story, he said, I had no idea he watched any of my videos, really. So Ryan, if you're watching, hi. He said, I can't believe that you shared those stories. He said, they just meant so much to me, and they kind of made my holidays a lot brighter. So it was very awesome, and I'm glad I did it. I enjoy those kinds of things very much. One of the things that I do too, that I don't know if you know about or not, I used to tell my classes Halloween stories. So I would spend 2 days telling stories that are based on my experiences, not just my experiences, but people that I know. I mean, so they're directly related to me. And I used to have high school seniors who would come back after those 2 days and said, I had to let my little brother sleep in my room with me last night. I was so afraid. But what's funny is that the last 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years, a fellow that I know who actually published a game called the Candle Game, which is based on an old Japanese game that samurai used to play. Not really play, but used to test their courage. He's invited me to tell my stories on Halloween, or right at around the time of Halloween, and it's been really interesting. And that and I bring that up because it does lead into something that I've been thinking about. It's about the worlds. Why? And I think about the stories, and about the Halloween stories in particular. And why is it that we are fascinated with these things? Why is it that we that we are intrigued by those kinds of stories? Why is it that we are so curious about things? Why do we have such creative imagination? I think of William Blake, a great romantic poet and artist and writer from 1790s, from before the turn of the 19th century. He wrote about the creative imagination. William Wordsworth, of course, the Romantics are all my favorites because that's where I am philosophically, in literature especially. So anyway, they look at the kinds of things that people want to see, and they were so popular. Well, because coming out of the Age of Enlightenment, people were beginning to get disillusioned. The Romantic movement was a reaction to the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution brought about things that I know you've spoken about, this whole drive for productivity, and that's where your worth is, and that's where your value is. And the Romantics said, stop. Yeah, great. Okay, we've learned these things, but that's not where our value is. That's not what we're about. And it's about understanding and feeling and sensing that here, for me, here in this middle world, we experience other worlds. And it's those other worlds that the stories that the science fiction, that all the other worlds are what we are drawn to, or what I'm drawn to, and what the romantics are drawn to. The other worlds, the upper world, the lower world, the other worlds that we each have opportunity to enter. We want to see those things. And the reality is, like one of the videos I made, is that the whole universe, all these worlds are right here with me right now. And not only are they here, in some way, it's a beautiful paradox to me. I am those other worlds. They are me. I am spirit, and they are spirit, and they're spirit expressions, and I'm one, and you're one, and we're all one, and we have access to those worlds if we listen to our heart and not that lower ego mind, and we access them because they're there for us. And that's why we seek those things. That's why we seek the stories, and we love the creative fiction. And so that's where I'm thinking today, Chrissy.
Well, what I love about that, Mike, is you asked the question and then answered it so eloquently and expansively. What is our fascination with stories? And I just got two simple words, which was "we know." And you've spoken in the field of, and to quote your word, so Mike sent me an email because we were just kind of pondering, where's it going to go? And Mike was talking interdimensionality, which you did. So you brought in the other worlds and then acknowledged that there is no separation between you and the other world, and access is in the beingness. It's in the symbiosis of connection to all. And I'm really sensing at the moment this, it's like, I would go for the clumsy word of the expansion, but what it feels like is a refinement of the energy. It's almost like the ability to get between the molecules. It's that kind of refinement to be able to permeate the illusion of separateness. And how I'm sensing that and feeling that is the way that nature's speaking at the moment. It's just so loud and clear. It's like you can have an appreciation for a tree because it's either visibly beautiful or tall and strong, or look at the way it moves in the wind. And then you can go to another level of, I can feel something when I touch this tree. And go to another level of, I can actually have a chat with this tree. I can converse with the tree. But this is something different in my experience. It's like I am the tree. The tree is me, and I can see myself in it as a reflection of me. It's totally mind spinning, and it makes the edges of my world just curl up and frazzle. And I just let go of that. That's thought, that's subconscious trying to label and pop it into a compartment because it likes that. But yeah, and look where that took me.
And that's beautiful, because one thing that I had thought of just this morning was, I wonder what it would be like to interview a grain of sand. To interview a grain of sand, would it do like we often do? But, well, I'm just a little grain of sand. But you're the beach. I wonder if this little grain of sand would own that I am the beach, because without you there, the beach isn't the same. And so I just wondered, I was thinking about that kind of silly in a way, but I thought, oh, this could even make a nice little article, perhaps.
Yeah.
Conversation with a grain of sand.
Absolutely, for sure. Yes, it's too cute, the cuteness of that. And if you apply that to human beings on the planet who together create humanity, create the experience, and without you and you and you, the experience won't be the same. It will be a different experience. Without that grain of sand, which may have started as a monolith, That's really interesting.
And that's the way my brain works. It just goes to all these different.
That I literally quoted a song at a client in the last couple of days, which is, what's it called? We used to be giants.
Oh.
We used to be giants. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're creating circles.
And yes, and lovely circles.
Feminine is in the house.
I remember my grandmother trying to make me do perfect circles because my handwriting was so bad. She was going to make me a master hand, and I had to just create overlapping circles, circles, circles.
Wow.
Never worked.
No, but that was doing something.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned that is a story that I have. Well, first of all, grain of sand. Let me capture this. Just so you see, whenever we talk, just my so many places. John Donne, Meditation 17, which is very famous. You know, ask not for whom the bell tolls; it tolls for thee. But the part about it, that if one clod is lost from the continent is less. It's, we are all part of it. Humanity is not the same without us. I mean, and that's the way I feel when, in terms of a resurrection connection, in terms of transitioning, at some point, spirit at that point is made, it's almost like the reverse image, or maybe like we're the negatives and we go to the positive image of spirit is now something new, because this experience that I've had here, I take it to spirit. And then it's part of that, it's part of that lower world then, where that feeds, that creates this fecundity, this fertility, and it feeds humanity. So that was one thing that I thought of. The other thing is this. I don't know if have I ever told you my oak tree story? I don't know if I've told you my oak tree story. So I've got this big oak tree right out in the backyard, right outside the dining room window. And so when I started working in the way of, and it didn't do it purposely. I know I've said this before, and labels don't matter, but in terms of shamanism, realizing that nature was speaking and that I could communicate in ways, and that I could allow myself to see and hear and feel, sense the communications of nature to me. And I was doing all this stuff, and then no real knowledge of what shamanism was supposed to be about. And then I start reading, and then I run into somebody like, because of a mention you made of Jonathan Horowitz. And then I start reading some of the things that he used to, and I realize over the course of the last 11 years that this is the way things have been going, that we communicate with the other worlds, and with this world here, and the other worlds communicate with all that's here in this middle world, which is what's so awesome about this. And why I think we come here is to sense this great creation that there is, and this great unity that there is. Well, it's probably been about 4 or 5 years ago now. I'm outside and I'm doing at that time, a much more informal ceremony. I won't even say informal, a much more knowledgeable ceremony than I do now. But I always would stand on the root of this oak that's about 20 feet away from the trunk, and it bulges up just a little bit. And I would usually stand on that to be grounded. And one night, it was a very warm night, and I didn't have shoes or socks on. And it had rained earlier, and so it was a little muddy, but not bad. And I just couldn't find, I was talking, I never had to look. I couldn't find the root. And it's just like I heard this voice, and it wasn't hitting my eardrums. It was wherever the hearing meets the brain, and there where that auditory nerve meets the brain. It was like, find me. Stop groping and grasping, and find me, sense me, feel me. And I just stopped dead. And I said, what do I do? Feel the warmth. And I would move my feet a few inches, and I could feel warmer that way, not that way. And it was just a little, and I was drawn right to that root. It was just like I had done it so many times, but I couldn't find it that night. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I hear that. And then I hear, come to me. And I went to the tree, and it's like right there, turn around. And I put my back to the tree, put your hand back. And it's what you said about feeling and sensing into a tree or any bit of nature. And I put my hand back, and I felt it was almost like there's a line from that root going right up that tree, this warm spot. And I can go to it any time now. And that's there. And I know where that is.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
How
So
beautiful.
I know that we have opportunities for unity, for communication, for knowing why we came here, to know these kinds of things. People think about that. Is that magic? Is that something? The magic is there for all of us. We all are magic.
It is. And we're coming away from a time of, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. If you speak of something that my mind cannot conceive of, I may ridicule you, I may laugh at you, I may say you need certifying, but my response might be, can you find the courage to play and get lost? Because when you play with nature without agenda, there's a lovely story coming to my mind, if I can share it with you.
Absolutely.
When I was studying Reiki years and years ago, the guy, I used to drive like, how far away was he? I bet he was 30 miles away to go and do a Reiki class because he was that good. Alan, I love you. And Alan had a magical back garden. There's just no two ways about it. And as a novice in energy work, I knew it was magical, couldn't tell you why. And so I'm learning how to do Reiki and practicing as a student. And then Alan set us a challenge one summer's evening, and we broke halfway through the class for a cup of tea. And he said, to those of you who are curious, walk the back garden and find it. Well, I was straight out there, barefoot, straight out there. And I had no idea what I was looking for. Is it in the physical? Is it in the metaphysical? And I just kind of, I just let my body guide me, to be honest. It was nothing cleverer than that. I let my body guide me, and my hands naturally came up and started to douse. So I just let the hands guide me, and they guided me to kind of the bottom left-hand corner. And then I found it, and there was this almost impermeable mushroom of energy, and I could draw the outline of it. Alan, come here now. And I said, you got to tell me about this. What is this? I said, is this the shape of my madness? And he said, it's an energy plume. He said, and I don't ask questions. It's an energy plume that holds the balance of some of the energies that we work with in Reiki. And I was just fascinated. And yeah, just.
I can see why.
Totally fascinating. And everything is, I remember years ago when I first discovered the word neutrino, and it became this fascinating thing to my inner geek. And I was talking to a fellow mystic about it, and she said to me, just imagine, she said, we're talking now on the phone, 200 miles apart. And how much of me is flowing through you, and how much of you is flowing through me as we speak? And I just love that. And I know I've said it ad nauseum, but COVID for me has been the biggest gift, because it pushed my whole business online. And what happened as a result of that is I work more expansively virtually than I ever used to do with people. And I think that correlates with 15 years of refining my work and polishing it and polishing it and polishing it. So expansion of skill base. But there's nothing I can't achieve online because the field is permeable. It's magical. It's absolutely magical. Yeah, magical.
I wonder just about that. I wonder if when you're in person with somebody, I don't know, I know that you're empathic. If the energies that are there, some of the other energies that might interfere with what you're wanting to do, you aren't subject to in online.
So I have a whole philosophy on interfering energies because everything comes from self. And when I was learning Reiki in comparatively the Dark Ages, fashionable in those times were words like protection, psychic attack, toxic, whatever. And as I've grown and grown in experience and wisdom, it's all me. If there's something around me that's causing some tomfoolery, I'm generating it, or one of the timelines that flows through me is generating it, or something I've become quantumly entangled with is generating it. But if I fail to be the architect in that, then I can move my mind to fear like that. And I can pull up protection and pull down shielding and all of that stuff. And that will keep me small. But if I remember that I am the architect and ask the question, what am I holding today? What am I holding in this? So if I now apply that to face-to-face physical client contact, and I really hear what you say, I think it's both the things. I think it's, yeah, that's really interesting. When you put a client back on their home base, comfort goes up, security goes up, confidence goes up because they're in a safe space. Mm-hmm. I was just reminded of the old BACP guidelines, which was to get them off their patch and into a therapy room, because it helps just loosen the container of perceived safety that they're in. But I think that works conversely now, because I think a client in their home, surrounded by their comfort, seems to have become more readily open to just letting shit fall away, mm-hmm. to taking themselves into process and doing that. And that all used to happen, but this is another dimension. It's another dimension. So, and I think that's because my consciousness has shifted from separateness to the whole lot is moving through me. The whole lot, and I am moving. Sorry, I was eating almonds before I came to camera.
I know what that's like.
And I am moving through everything. So, yeah,
yes.
That quantum.
Yeah. It was just a question. I just wondered. But I get what you're saying. I have read things since I'm in the path I am, that about protection and that sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't sense that. I don't sense that need. It's interesting. Quick story, a story from my childhood. When I was about 4 years old, maybe 5, we lived in a small 3-room apartment, and I don't know why I wasn't particularly afraid of the dark, but I realize now I've been thinking a lot the last couple of weeks about my childhood and about my inner child and the things I used to do. And I even referred to that in one of the comments I made from one of your videos about running like a little weirdo through the apartment complex. Um, I've been thinking about that. And this story, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I wanted a drink of water. And my dad told me, go in and get it yourself. And I was like, so this was when TV was like a big special thing and it was dark and there was only the TV on. And I'm like, it's dark, I'm afraid. And he forced me to go. But I knew something was back in that kitchen. I really did. And when I went back there, I did it because I knew I had to. When I went back there and I turned the corner to open the refrigerator, I saw something with big green eyes. And I screamed. And I felt this intense fear. My dad came in and he was angry. And I mean, I did not get spanked a lot of it, but I do remember he's like, this is all your imagination. And he whacked me just a little whack on the bottom. I mean, it wasn't like a whipping or anything, but just, and do you know that since I have come to know some of the unseens who have been with me these past few years now, that one of them is like, do you remember I was there? Because the danger wasn't me. I was there to protect you. And it was very powerful to me when this guy told me that. And I realized then that all these times in my childhood where I felt something, I felt so many times that somebody was with me. I even would say like, who's there? And I don't mean like looking over my shoulder, but like just a sense of this energy with me, this presence with me. When I would run through the apartment complex, I knew that there was something with me. When I would go into what we called the woods, it was just like massive train tracks at the end of our apartment complex. And there were 3 main lines and there was a side rail. And in between those 3 main lines and the side rail, there was all this overgrowth and stuff. There was one place I would go in there that was like my little shelter. And I kind of enhanced it when I was a kid. I kind of enhanced it and made it like a little secret place. But it was there that I would often feel like something was with me and I could be there and I felt safe and secure. And I felt like I could say anything I wanted to there. And that was the exact place. Do you remember the video when I showed you that arrowhead that I had? And I wrote, that's the exact place where I found that arrowhead that I still have today.
Wow.
So yes, the protection thing, no, I don't sense that. It's a matter of understanding the kinds of things that you're talking about, that there's this unity and we don't have to accept what others have experienced or experiencing. I do know that when I've done other world journeys that there have been times where my guides told me, invite your ancestors. And I have seen ancestors that ascended there, just shafts of light, just there hearing with me and whatever I was given to say, just shafts of light, just shooting straight up. And I knew some ancestors that ascended. So whatever they were caught in or trapped in, that's not my thing. And I don't have to worry about the protection. Yeah.
It's reminding me of, I can't remember when it was. I've done so many videos recently. One of the videos in the last few days where I think I said right use of wave and particle, or right use of light and matter. And when we take that right down into the personal, that can literally mean right use of energy. So when you bring wave to particle, it manifests into the 3D. So right use is, I see something I cannot match to. My internal mapping won't match to that. So I can go into fear. So I can manifest fear easy peasy, or I can stay curious, or I can go right into the ego and just start talking crap about how I know what this is and blah, 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 yada, yada. So right use of power is, if you don't know what it is, be with that. Don't know what it is. I love that story of Green Eyes being with you as a child. You were a magical child. And I'm not surprised you screamed. I'm not surprised you screamed. I remember as a very little girl being woken up in the night because something came along behind my head and went yank. I woke up and I swore to all the adults, no, it was real. Something pulled my hair last night. To this day. So
children see, children know.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know so many magical kids. And I think, you know, as a parent, that's going to be another lovely challenge with the new generations coming in when they bring children through, of how they hold them in their magic. Because just kind of watching the last 2 or 3 generations come through, and having had the privilege of working with some young people professionally, they think in a different way, they behave in a different way, their parameters are way out, way out. And, you know, when a dyed-in-the-wool old crone like me meets beautiful light like that, well, she really has to keep herself in check, because, you know, you and I are coming out of the age of narcissism and martyrdom and victimdom and abuse, all of that heavy karmic energy that we've all worked so hard to clear. And if there's any trace of that left in me, when a youngster starts telling me how magical they are, how open they are, how they don't give a shit, my old programming might want to come in and meet that. And I always say it's the child that raises the adult. Always, always, if the adult is open enough and playful enough to go, there's room for change in that old belief system.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still, you know, generations of parents doing the very best they can with what they've got, and what they've got is a belief system of how to control a child. That's how you actually how you raise children properly, is how to control a child. I can't control them. Well, can anyone control you? Good luck with that.
And the ego caving to the expectations is the control. You give that away. You give that to other people. I give that to other people, I know. And it's interesting that you say that about coming in contact with young people, because I had thousands of students over the course of the years as a teacher. And one of my things was I didn't post classroom rules most of the time. They were more like guidelines or something. But I knew that they just wanted to be allowed to be themselves, to learn in the context of who they were. And one of the highest compliments one of my students paid me was when I first started publishing on Medium. This former student saw my post. I didn't even know he was on there. And he wrote this comment, and he said, all I can tell you is that being in Mike DePung's class was, you didn't know maybe what you learned exactly that day, what skill you were supposed to learn. But all you knew is that when you walked out of that class, you were a richer, fuller person than when you walked in. And it was because, and I've had many, many students tell me that, it was because I truly valued them, and I knew, and I used to tell my students, I want to get something really clear here. This was usually the first day of school. As far as I'm concerned, most of you are smarter than I am. You have more native intelligence than I do, more than likely. I know a few things about some specific stuff I'm supposed to deal with you about in this class, but you have more. And I said, don't forget that, because I want you to let me see that. And that was always just, I saw kids just excel, just do wonderful things. And I often think about the very thing you mentioned here about about controlling, and the kids who were the problem children. It was just always increasing measures, severity to control them. And I was given, I had one year I had a freshman class of students, and I was given a senior who had failed the second half of freshman English, and he had to have it to graduate. And this is a sad story to me, but he, I just could see in this kid, like he wanted to be able to express himself. And I didn't put any of those guidelines, I didn't write him up. There would be times he'd be talking, and I just let him go. He ended up writing a story. One of the things we had to do was write a personal narrative. He ended up writing a story, and I would always offer to my students, if you want to read your own story, that's great. If not, I want people to hear what you have to say. I will read them, but I will read them anonymously. And unless you say something, and I would tell them this up front before they ever start, unless somebody knows what you're writing and you tell them, nobody will know. And they enjoyed that. They liked that. Well, I read this boy's story, this senior who was a heavy drug user, had been in trouble with the law. He wrote a story about his grandfather and about finding his grandfather's World War II uniform in the attic, and all this. The girls in the class were crying when I read it, and they said, "Who wrote that? We want." And he owned up to it, and he said, "I did." And I saw, like, okay, there's promise here. But I was one class out of 7 hours a day, and one person who probably had a philosophy that was different than almost everybody else in the school. And this boy, after he graduated, he ended up back into drugs. He, in a drug rage state, didn't know, ended up killing a child, a baby. And he's serving life in prison without parole right now. But what you're speaking into, these kinds of things, I was reminded of it because we each know deep down, as a child coming into this realm, we wanted to come here. We came here to know the beauty of all of this, of the worlds. And we know that there's interdimensionality. Children sense it and know it. Some of them, it's quickly squashed out of them. But then as we grow up in the adult sense, we don't allow that because of societal constructs, because of what we've done to ourselves through ego, because of what we've inherited, what we've allowed. But we get intrigued with all these science fiction things and the fantasy stories and the Harry Potters, which I love, and all that sort of thing, because we know deep down still that those worlds exist. And it's a loss to what we came here to know. And it's okay, because it's all gonna work out. But it's just like my thing, when I do my ceremony, my energy work at night, every night I do it. You're there every night too, along with other people. When I do that, my big thing is not like make them see the light, just help them to know their own happiness and know how great they really are. That's it.
Yeah. I remember going to Harry Potter World in the UK.
I remember your pics from that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about it the other day, and there's a picture of me standing next to the Hogwarts Express. I tell you what, more like a 6-year-old girl I have never looked, not even when I was a 6-year-old girl, smiling from ear to ear. And it was the most, just switched on all of my magical buttons, the whole thing. And yeah, it's an MGM show and profits and yada yada, big business, but the energy in there is phenomenal. Like, you can touch the magic, it's fantastic. And it just switches on that wild, magical child that I can only speak for myself, that I certainly came here to be. And it just turns the whole thing on until you go, and we go right back to your first question of what is it in us around Halloween and the stories. What do we know? It's all of that. And I know, KNOW, as my dad used to say, I absolutely know magic is, okay, great example for the skeptic. To the skeptics, how is sourdough made? You make a sourdough starter and you create yeast straight out of the air. That, to me, is magic. I cannot see yeast in the air, but if I mix flour and water and leave the jar lid off, that's going to go live. That is going to go live, and that's going to become a culture. And there are great bakers who have 100-year-old sourdough cultures.
Yes.
And as long as we look after them, they never die, because there's always, the air is so rich. I mean, it's its own microcosm. It is so rich with life. Now, if that ain't magic, I don't know what is.
And I agree. And I think about that magic, and about that is the magic, is to understand it, it's to sense that these worlds exist, that this invisible stuff that was one of the things I used to do with my students, about communication. And I said, you're communicating so many ways that you're not even aware of. I said, you're receiving communications that you're not even aware. And they're like, what do you mean? I would have that radio, and I know I've done that with you before, and I turn on the radio, and here it is. These waves are shooting through us, around us, to us all right now. And it's right there. You just have to tune in. And that's what the magic is.
It is.
No, we can tune into, we can grab the yeast by just allowing for it.
Absolutely. I remember once I was teaching, I was about 20 years ago, I used to teach development group. We would end the group by doing a healing circle. So we would bring people into prayer if people needed healing or whatever. And I think there'd been a world event or something that I needed to harness energy for. And so I invited the class into a healing circle. And I said, we're going to create a beam, and we're going to focus on the issue in hand, and we're going to send the beam out. Do you want to play? Because I've never done this before. It's just come to me. And they said, yeah. And so we lit a candle, a big pillar candle, and we put it in the middle of the table, and we sat around it. And it was also practice to tune into the heart chakra, to open the heart chakra and just start beaming into this candle. Just a circle of people all beaming into the candle. And I was working with my then guides, or what I believed to be my guides. And I just heard now. And I just said to the group, and send. And a candlestick moved across the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting. And that's a manifestation, a physical manifestation of what was going on, far greater power that was going out and going on. But that's what people want to see. They want to see those things.
Oh, they want to see table tipping, and they want to see all of that. But I couldn't have expected this. And the thing is, the eyes can only see what the mind is willing to conceive of. And if 20 years ago, if my mind had been half as open as it is now, I may have seen what was in the room working with us. I may have seen that. I do remember when I was younger, issuing a clear order I never want to see spirit. I said, I never want to see. You dance with me and sing with me and we can co-create together, but I never want to see. And so shortly after that, I saw.
Yes.
Yes, but yeah, and I sometimes see, but it was just, yeah, but I have no fear around it now. But
No, not anymore. The same kinds of things have happened. So every night when I do this ceremony every night, and my ceremony has come to focus on this unity. And it's very simple. It's not it's just, it's me, but it's not me, because I invite the unseens there. I establish a circle, a sacred circle in this realm of earth, air, water, fire, ether. Every night I do it, and that's kind of a formal part of it. But I have come to make sure and to include the worlds, the different worlds there. But standing with me around that are people that I invite, whether, I don't know if they would agree. I don't know if you would agree or not, but you're with me there every night. Others,
I've heard it. I hear this many times.
And others are too. And so one of the things that there's never been any other person in ceremony with me. And this just, well, you know what, I'm not even going to go to there, but I am going to say this, that sometimes one of the things that has happened since we last talked, I know that the Cantumble, the little people, the nature spirit beings that are here, they have helped, and dreams are a big thing of helping me to experience the other worlds too. In fact, like this, I think I told you about this before, this little piece of fluorite. I was given dreams about this 3 different times, 3 different dreams over the course of about a month. And I was told, you need to get fluoride. This is what it is. And I won't even say that. It wasn't fluoride. I saw it and I'm like, I think that's fluoride. I've never really studied it, but it was just this sense. And when I looked it up, that's what it was. That's what I was seeing in the dream. So that's personal. I've had people who come that I tell about these kinds of things and about my ceremony, like my next door neighbor, who is an awesome guy, and who is open to many things. I would tell him, for instance, about the owl and talking to the owls. And I think I mentioned that before. And he's like, oh, and I'm like, no, I do. I said, I heard one just a little bit ago, and I would call for it. And he'd say nothing. And I said, no, they take about 30 seconds to answer. And sure enough, he's like, son of a bitch, I wouldn't have believed that if I weren't standing here with you. And I talked for like 10 or 15 minutes to this owl. Another time I told him that the owl was there, that I knew that the owl had been there. And he said, oh no. And I said, oh, I got a picture. And I had just addressed the north, south, east, and west. And here was this big picture, this picture of this big owl sitting on top of the weather vane that was on top of his cupola, or his, gazebo is what I'm saying. On top of his little gazebo, he has this huge owl sitting on this tiny little bitty stick sticking up of the flag. And he was like, so, and then I have times where I know I'm dealing with that presence will be really strong, whether I'm speaking to a specific ancestor or to one of the unseens who I know, that I have an older Jeep that sits in the driveway by where I do the ceremony, and these lights just will flick off and on. And so my wife would say, well, that just could happen. That could be anything. And I would, okay, fine. And she came out one night and I knew that there was there was a present thing. And she said, well, did your lights look on? I said, no, but I think they're going to. Boom. And but does that make a difference to people who won't see? No, it doesn't.
It's not your responsibility. They will either see it on their own. I'm just having, do you know, I'm having a proper retrograde here. It's beautiful, of how I grew up into being a mystic. And so when I used to run these groups for development, the guidance for the group was that I never owned it. And so the group would move around everybody's house, and whoever was hosting owned the group. And if there was something they wanted to try, then they did it. They led the group. So I was backstop. I was just space holder and participant. So it became this really playful space, because I never wanted, you know, oh, let's go to Chrissy's group. No, it's just a group. And so we went round to somebody else's house this night, and my offering was to do a collective canvas. So I took a fairly large canvas and some paints, and I set the canvas up with loads of paints. And Chrissy, what's your offering? And I said, well, I've set a canvas up, and I'm just curious if during the night you pass the canvas and you pick up a brush and you dunk it in the paint and you go and let's see what happens at the end of the night. Anyway, so we're coming to the end of the night, and I stopped by the canvas, and something made me go, oh, that's interesting. So I grabbed the hostess and I said, turn that canvas upside down, tell me what you think. And she went, it's a lamp. I said, it's a lamp. What's going on with the lighting in this house? She said, the top light keeps fusing. Any other lights keep fusing? No, just the top landing light keeps fusing. Bulb after bulb after bulb. Okay. I said, do you want me to sit with it? And she said, yeah. So I sat on the stairs and just went into a really soft space and invited whatever was trying to communicate with electricity to come speak to me. And it was a little girl. And we had a conversation until I could sense her energy had gone from being quite jaggedy and fearful to just this soft flow state. And I said, are you ready to go? And she said, yes. So I said, okay, do what you got to do. So she plugged into my solar plexus, off she went. So in the olden days, we used to call that rescue work. That was a spiritual rescue work. God, how far we've come. And everybody told me about that. I didn't put a brush to that canvas. Everybody else told me there's a problem with the lighting.
Wow.
Can't quite be seen because it needs to be magic.
But yes, it is magic. And it's being open to it. That's one of the things.
It's science without expectation. It's science without expectation or egoic will. It's pure curiosity. Wow.
And that's the base of science, really. True, devoted, dedicated scientist. It's this insatiable, childlike curiosity.
It is.
And I've heard true scientists before like that. And I know that's what, and I realize when they're talking about it, you can see it in them. I can, at least, I can see it in them.
One of my good friends is, he's a botanist. Is he a botanist? No, he's not. He's a marine biologist. And just hugely bright scientist. And we play what if. We play what if. And he lives on the other side of the world. But when we get into what if, we birth new universes. I mean, the mind just, well, it leaves home. It just leaves home and it goes off to other dimensions. And nothing is beyond the realm of possibility in these conversations. Oh, I would love that to be typical dining room conversation. That is a passion of mine.
That would be awesome. Yeah. One of the things that I've learned, I will share this with you. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. Dinner party of your wildest dreams. You're allowed to invite 4 people. I want to say 6 people. Go.
I know I faced this kind of thing. So one would be William Blake, who I mentioned before.
Yeah.
One would be Dr. Maya Angelou.
Mm.
One would be Dr. King. And I say that because I am really, it seems so far removed, but because of all this unity of the worlds and stuff, I just see so many connections, so many, I can't ignore what's going on in the collective and in society. And while I'm not drawn into it, I like to observe, but I have my, so anyway, Dr. King, he understood that. I definitely would love to have Nikola Tesla there. So that would be, there's just a lot of questions I would think I would have for Mr. Tesla. Nothing to do with the pigeon. How many did I name? I don't know how many I named. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
William, Martin.
I would love to sit down with, I didn't even ask, do they have to be dead?
Yeah, anybody.
Yeah, somebody who I have been really taken with recently and read her memoir and just appreciate her is Joy Harjo, who is the Poet Laureate of the United States. She's the first Native American Indigenous poet, Poet Laureate of the United States. Really awesome. I could keep thinking of people. What about you?
Maya Angelou, of course. Merlin, or the energy manifest as Merlin. Buddha, or the energy manifest as Buddha. Leonardo da Vinci. And the other two would be I think I'd quite like to meet Gandhi.
That, yes.
And for shits and giggles, Pink.
Pink.
I'd love to meet Pink.
Good.
He is. I watched a documentary on Pink. Pink, the superstar performer. And at the end of the documentary, I said to myself and out loud, my God, she is the most alive woman I have ever come across. Alive in every cell of her being. Beautiful, powerful parent. Fantastic performer, acrobat, voice to die for, and girl next door. And I just think I'd love to get drunk with you. I would love to get drunk with her.
Yeah. I can see that. I remember her song that she did with the lead singer of Train. And it was just a very powerful song. Yeah.
Gandhi and Pink, 2 women and 4 male energies. 1, 2, 3, 4 male energies. That's okay. Women can hold it.
That's okay. Male are often moved by the divine feminine more anyway. So, I was going to say something. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, yes, when you first asked me that, I thought, you know what? If I could be, one of my dreams was, by the way, that I had probably 2 years ago, was that I was at this dinner party and it was like ancient Rome. It was in this kind of, it was almost a cave, like a lot of stone stuff there, but it was Rome. And it was a secretive meeting because the people there were being sought, they were being persecuted. And, but we were there and they said, we wanted you to be here because we want you to understand. And what I understood was, even though there was persecution, there was great joy. They enjoyed, because they were spirits. And they were there around this table and they were laughing and they were saying, oh, remember when this happened? And remember when they almost got you? And it was just a thing of joy. And when I woke up from that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so full. I could have a dinner party with 6 anybody. If I could choose, maybe I would, every day I would choose somebody new. Because we are all expressions of spirit incarnate. And if we can just tap into that or allow ourselves to do that, it can be wonderful. fellowship, what I call the fellowship of the heart. And that's what, in fact, in the dream, that's what they told me then. You write about, you've spoken about fellowship of the heart. This is what fellowship of the heart is. And so it was a special thing. And, there was one thing I didn't get back to, to the end of my little thing about being outside and doing my ceremony every night. This happened a few months ago. Well, actually, it was probably right before Thanksgiving. I was out there, and there are times where you talk about, you can sense things. Not long before that, I had sensed that while I was out there and speaking. It was a night when it was raining. So I was just right outside the back door, and I said, I just wanted to be outside because this is where I do my ceremony. It's always outside. And I just wanted to be there because I just enjoy it. I feel closer to some of the nature beings that are there. And somebody, you just talked about somebody pulling your hair. Somebody just pressed down on my shoulder, and I said, oh, I didn't know you were here. And it happened like 2 more times. And it was like, I looked, there was nothing. There was no one there. I didn't see anybody. But it was one of the little people, one of the contemplate that was right there overhead from the oak, and it come down.
I want to say, don't be surprised if something manifests for you in the next couple of years.
Well, then the next night or two, I sensed there's something here. I'm doing the ceremony. I'm standing where I stand, and feeling the presence of people that are there, and of unseens that are there. And I was like, something else is here. And it's over there. And I look, and out from underneath of the car comes a raccoon. And I said, hi. And he came up to me, not super close, about 3 or 4 feet away. And I said, oh, wait, I've got something for you. And I walked over, because one of the offerings I give is, like you said before about eating almonds, I ate a lot of unsalted peanuts. So I bring them out every night. They're part of my an offering that I do every night. And so I went and got some of these unsalted peanuts, and I said, here, and I threw it out, and he just stood there waiting for me to toss his little peanut. He'd pick them up with his little hands, and I could hear him pick it up. It was close enough, and I could hear him chewing.
Oh, cute.
So then this happened like a half a dozen times. And one night I was like, I haven't seen raccoon for a while. And I dreamed a raccoon. That's one of the things that the spirits do in the dreams. They brought me different animals and different unseens, like the contemplate on 2 different occasions brought me 2 white horses, both times. And then I had the spirits, and this one spirit woman who I know, she brought me a red fox through this very intricate dream. And then another time, one of the ascended ones who I know, an ascended master, and Contemple brought me a grizzly bear and paraded it through the middle of this trailer that I was in. And this bear was just like, hey, fine, this is cool. And went on out. And so anyway, these energies are shared with me. And I knew raccoon had been shared with me in a dream years ago. And I felt strongly about it. So I just said aloud, as I was ending the ceremony, I haven't seen you for a while, and I know that this might happen, but I enjoyed our time. Coming straight across the driveway in the dark, I could see him. Here comes raccoon. He came straight to my feet and sniffed around and put his little hands out, his little paws out, and scraped on the end of my moccasins, just scraping there. And I said, okay, I've got the peanuts, and I was handing him the peanuts. I had some in my pocket, and I was handing him the peanuts. So do these communications, are we all spirit? And does spirit communicate with spirit? Yes. To me, yeah, very definitely, yes. Yeah. Animals know it. Little children know it. And
like
it's wonderful when we can reclaim that and awaken to that.
I see it like mycelium, the endless network of connectors, just endless, infinite.
That's the way I feel about that lower world and the fecundity that's there. Yes. The roots of the trees that span a continent. all interconnected.
Absolutely. All communicating with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's such a beautiful story. Little raccoon.
I loved it. It was special.
Absolutely.
And yet, you know, I've shared it with just a couple of people and, oh, kind of cool, but I want to see it. No, I'm not, I don't need to do that. Yeah.
My response would be then go and see it.
Yeah. Yes. And that's, I've had somebody ask me recently, they keep seeing hawks. And what does that mean? I mean, they know that I'm tuning this. I said, well, I can tell you what it means, but what it means to me and what a book says that is a great book, I said, it means nothing. Because I can tell you, I can't tell you that it's going to do something for you or that it means this in your life. I said, you're the only one who can answer that. And you know what? They don't follow up. They don't.
You've got to put the work in. You've got to put the work in. You have to invest and invest and invest and invest. And the curiosity is never exhausted, ever. There is no arrival point. It's just this endless opening and unraveling of everything you thought you knew. It's just,
and that's why I love your videos, because it always makes me more curious about things.
Makes me more curious. I
or
never
even when,
know what's going to
when you pull the
happen.
cards and I'm like, so I have the same, and I still only have the one deck. I still only have the mystical shaman deck, and you will pull the cards and I'm like, oh yeah, I had that, but that wasn't what I got from that. And but I mean, it dovetails. There's that synchronicity there when you start thinking about it. Yeah. But for me and how I apply that, how I use that, yeah, different.
Yeah, imagine, be open to anything. Because we have no idea. You know, we were once giants. And it's just like the remembering and the remembering into the collective.
Yes.
I feel an urge to pull some cards. What do you think?
Do it. Yes, please. You're much, I love the way you sense into those and do that.
Right. Let's do this. Mystical shaman, of course.
Well, I will tell you this before you even do it, so that you know. I did this earlier before that we established the link here, and there were 4 cards that came out.
You got them with you?
And I do, but let's see what you pull.
Okay.
Here's what I will tell you what I do sometimes. If I'm doing this like in a longer thing and I'm like, okay, I really want to see, I want to reconsider like what, because I think that, you know, my unseen's want to communicate with me, that the worlds want to communicate with me. So I have the 4 cards in the guidebook here in the spots where they are, so that they can be fermenting, so that they can be just like growing in energy there. So let's
go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, 2 have sprung out. Ooh. I want another one, please. God, so many messages coming in. There's messages coming in that are like, stop running around thinking there's so much to do. It's being done for you, and can you be held in that? Can you stand still? So this is, I mean, it begins with completion.
Yes.
It begins with completion, and that busy, tidy mind might want to go into thinking it has 47 things to do within the next hour in order to even be worthy of that. But there is no greater transmutative power than the power of the sun, for goodness sake. the element of fire within the body is what we use to create the soul forge by bringing the polarity together. So the old fetid narrative to the what if, and the soul forge work is pushing this, creating diamonds with pressure. The element that we use to harness is fire, and fire burns it up. It burns the old forest down to the ground, to phoenix rising energy. But this is how hard we have to work for that. Oh, the sweet irony. Just be. This is chop wood, carry water. This is be ordinary and know that it's happening. Okay. So that must be speaking into that's speaking straight into self-worth. That's speaking into what we touched on before of that productivity. It's productivity addiction. It's give to get. So if I do this thing, I will get that thing, which sets us up for entitlement and expectation. And this is the burning away of all of that to move us into this joyful, passionate curiosity. Joyful, passionate, how are you? Joyful, passionate, and curious. I remember last July, I think it was, I went through a phase and when anybody asked me how I was, I just stood there and said, anything can happen. Anything can happen at the moment. And the underlying, what's the underlying card?
The hummingbird.
Listen and sense. Listen and sense. It's a very quiet week though. It's going to be a very gentle week energetically. So do you want to show us your 4 cards?
Yes, I can. I'm reminded of what you often bring up in your videos, your distaste for the word purpose, and you know, I use that word, and I've used that word in my writing, but it's not the sense of that purpose of this is what I have to do, because that is driven by what you just mentioned. I have to do because I need to get. And that's kind of that whole thing of purpose. And when I speak of purpose, the way I am, my purpose is the kind of thing you just said: joy, passion, curiosity. It's to be me. And however I choose to express that, my purpose is my expression of me just being me. That standstill card, just being me. That, to me, that's the implication, which maybe there's too much connotation with the word, the way you think about it, that maybe I should reconsider the way I use it. But that's exactly what I mean when I use that.
It is. It's the kind of purpose that leads to self-importance. It's the kind of purpose that leads to hierarchical value system, to the extent that, what, you have no purpose. It's like what do you want to be when you grow up? It's all of that.
Right.
I mean, I can't remember. I can remember. I have never known ever what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still not grown up. I still don't know what I want to be. I don't want to be anything. I am everything. I am infinite. Stop defining me. Infine me.
Yes, I have various lives along the way. Yes.
Many, many lives. I've had many lives in this lifetime.
Yes.
Many, many lives.
Yes.
I'd rather stay open to that than define myself into one cubicle. But
absolutely. Yeah, I have no interest in that.
Yeah, and I want to change that first conversation. What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah.
Spare me.
That's a group of guys that I see about once every other month or so. Every so often I'll ask them, because I can sense in them the way they're feeling about things. And I'm like, what would you what would you really enjoy doing every day of your life? What do you care so much about that it would just be fun to do every day? And it's so interesting what they say, because one of my very best friends, he taught for 35 years and 34 years. And his deep down desire, what he wants to do and what he's done since he's retired, he wants to produce music. He has an amazing ear for music. And what he's done, he's not in the industry or anything, so it's not like he can really produce music with bands, but he combines things and he tweaks things. He records and goes over it and says, this would sound better here if they would have done this. And he takes things from bands and otherwise, and he just and then he puts it all on audio and then sometimes coordinates it with video. He's got this massive setup in his home that is incredible. In fact, I'm going there this Friday. I'm so looking forward to it, because there's ever so often he'll say, well, is there anything you want to hear, want to listen to? So this time I think I chose Traveling Wilburys. I wanted to see. So, but he does, I mean, he has some amazing Santana stuff and things that I'm really into. But that's what he taught for 35 years. And he's like, I was a horrible teacher. I'm like,
Oh my
Cal,
God.
you were not. And he's like, I wasn't, I felt like here's key, that productivity. I felt like that was something I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. It was
No.
a calling. I said, who told you that? Who said that was a calling and you had to do that? And he's like, well, it's just the way it was. And, I mean, but him and another guy who I know who's a financial advisor, if he could do anything, it would be restore classic cars all day long. That's his thing. That he would. And this is a guy who not only he's a financial advisor, but he had been a teacher. He taught music, and right now he's in 3 different bands. Every weekend, all the time, he plays with bands. He knows the lighting and the music. And I thought for sure he would say, oh yeah, I would be a musician full time.
Yeah.
But he probably makes close to a full-time salary just on weekends, because he does it all year long. And they get called to different states to do in these 3 different bands that he's with. And he does jazz and he does 80s, classic 80s stuff. And he does, but what does he want to do? His passion, his joy, his curiosity is, hey, I would restore cars all day long if I could do that. That's what
I would. I think I would. That sounds really, really good fun. But you touched on the essence of part of the Capricornian structure that's being broken down at the moment, which is, oh my God, I just did that job for 20 years and I didn't even like it. And it's almost like this lifting of the fog, like this never really knowingness. I don't like what I do for a living. It's kind of there behind all of this haze, and suddenly it's a really harsh contrast to the illusion or the lie. And you can sell somebody on a dream. It's easy. You just tap straight into their ego. It's really, really easy. You'd make a good teacher. Do you really think so? And it all kind of goes from there. If we haven't got the integrity and the authenticity to go, no, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I'd rather be mending old cars up to my elbows in grease. Thank you very much. Well, that's not a job. How many children have said, I want to be an actor. I want to be an actress. Well, that's not a proper job. I want to be an artist. That's not a proper job. Get a proper job. That's a proper job.
This takes me back to your thing that you did. What if?
What if?
What if there was no industrial revolution in terms of the mentality? What if today, though, having endured and gone through and been structured and conditioned by that, and the consequential technological revolution, what if we just valued other people for those kinds of things that they had a passion about, and we let them do that? We let one another do those things, because food sources, money source, the abilities I think there would be supply of anything anybody would need. So when I think about what if, I think, what if we just let people be their
I will,
joy, their passion, their
yeah, I will drink to that. I was running a workshop the other day, and we were talking about judgment and racism. And it was a fascinating conversation. And there's some, when we can get wedged in like a tick to these really big Leviathan belief systems that originate from racial abuse, from racial displacement. That old wound sits in the DNA. Slavery, being taken from your country and force-fed a new way of life, is a scar so deep that 21st century victim of that won't know how deep it goes or how old that wound is. It's mendable, completely mendable. And so what it can do is it can create some really entrenched, hardcore beliefs that can never be changed. Never be changed. And I get that. I totally get that. So we're talking about fixed belief systems and racism. And I shared a story about my dad, and my dad was an out and out altruist. He was a terrible parent and a horrible bully, but he was an altruist and he had such beauty, and he was a composer and a writer. He had such fine qualities, but he was an army boy, and it turned him into just a horrible man. And he had terrible trauma, terrible wounding, bless him. But in his beauty was this gorgeous altruism. And he would go, his favorite food is Indian, favorite food, Malayan, Keralan, Indian. And he would go into an Indian restaurant and they'd bring him the menu and he'd say, no, I don't want the menu. I'd like the chef to feed me like he feeds his family. And then what happened in the kitchen is the chef gets excited. So dad gets a meal that is injected with passion. And the chef was connected to his family system, and that will take him all the way into his heritage. And dad used to get fed like a king because he didn't see color. He never, and obviously for me to be this shade, dad married a Malay woman. So he didn't see, he saw color, but he didn't see color as a barrier or a thing to label. And he just saw food. he just saw food. And he's a truffle hunter. My dad is a truffle hunter. His Chinese star sign is the boar. And if you can give him fresh ground to dig his nose into, he will find something delicious and fantastic. He introduced me to grappa. I'd never even heard of grappa. I don't like grappa, but he brings something new because he's playful. He's like a child. And what I was trying to bring to this beautiful group I'm working with is when you shift from an old belief system into what if, you birth new worlds. Because all the expectation drops away. All of your self-importance drops away. All of your hardcore beliefs drop away. In the what if, there's no room to pre-know something. It's just, what if? What if this is the worst meal I've ever eaten? What if this is the best meal I've ever eaten? What if he gives me a car?
Yeah.
Yeah, what if? So yeah, little homage to my dad. I never refer to him as my late dad, even though he's gone. He's so here.
Yeah, I get that. I speak to my mom and dad every night.
Do you?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I address them in my ceremony that they are my portals to the ancestors.
Ah.
And I thank them for everything that I experienced. And I know I've shared with you before, they were functional alcoholics, but everything I have now and everything I experienced when I was a child, I know it was a gift, and I know it was, and I'm grateful for it. Did it create wounds because of my responses to things and create shadows and things that need to be healed? Yes, but I don't ascribe that to them. there was a factor there, but my responses were my responses. And so I address them and thank them every night. And yes, I understand that very much. Yeah. So often I worked with my dad for years. In one of my past lives, I painted with him, and he was a painter all of his life. And so we worked a number of years together, just about every day. And so there are times I just still talk to him, and like, I'll go into a house and see some really sloppy work, and I say, "Boy, Dad, look at that." So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm dying to see your cards. I'm conscious of the
Oh,
time.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay, let me. And I will try to pull them in the order that I. Yes, here they are. This one, this one. Okay. The first one that came out was one that I saw recently from somewhere.
Oh,
The many
lol.
paths. And what was interesting to me is that this morning when I drew this, with what I had emailed you last night, when I'm talking about interdimensionality and I mean, those paths can be anywhere between the worlds, anything. They are there for us. And it reminded me of you and the whole purpose thing. Yeah, no, choose one, choose one. I remember when I experienced when it was like there was the thing that made me realize, okay, this is a different way of looking at life. That night when I spoke to my own heart, when I saw behind the eyes in the mirror, when I was there, and it was like my own heart and that voice that just wherever that point is, where the auditory nerve meets the brain, it was like that, those words were there. Like, what would give you joy to do? What would you enjoy doing? I said, I want to write. I want to write. I would enjoy doing that every day if I could do, because the question wasn't what I had thought about before. And what I used to think, even talk about with students, was, what would you do every day if you didn't have to worry about making money, about fitting to somebody else's expectations? And when I said, I remember saying specifically out loud, I would love to write. I would love to write poetry, because that's what I had envisioned. And I said, but like, what if I mean, that might not be a good thing. And I heard my own inner spirit, heart, highest self, whatever, laugh at me. Like, this isn't a birthday cake. You're not blowing out candles and making a wish. It's many paths. You choose, because it could be something different every day.
Absolutely. And it can transcend your dream.
Yes. So that was the first card that I pulled, and it was in harmony, in synchronicity with what I've been thinking about. And the second one is one that I've seen recently too, and this is a very special card to me.
Oh, that card's been out so much.
So I think I told you this, but when I first got this deck, I was like, what is the energy that moves through this deck? What is the energy that is going to characterize this for me?
Nice.
And I shuffled and shuffled and shuffled. And this card, boom, this is just flat out flipped up and there. Magic. And it's the magic of all the kinds of things we've been talking about, of realizing and understanding. It's not the magic of waving a wand and moving a vase, or somebody. It could be, but before anything like that ever happens, to me, I knew that I had to know the magic of the unseens, of energies that are here, energies that I am, and that I am in unity with, and the worlds that are there. And the magic to me, and when I was thinking about this card this morning, the magic to me is this whole ability to understand that they're not alternative to me. They're not alternative. There's not Mike DePong in this life and in another life and in another life. They all come to me where I am right here. I'm Mike DePong in the upper world. I'm Mike DePong in the other world. I'm Mektapong in the lower world. And that's magic, being able to move between those worlds, and then amazing things happen, like a raccoon sniffing my moccasin. So yes, so that, and and when I think about friends, and I think about events, and I think about what's going on in the collective and in the world and in political realms too, it's like, how different would it be if just a fraction of people would awaken to this magic that is available to us all around us? What difference would it make?
I genuinely believe it's happening.
And I do too, to a large extent. And and I will say this, and I know this is being recorded, so maybe this is a little risky, although I would have never pushed for it. But a lot of people made fun of Marianne Williamson running for president of the United States. You know what? Her energy is exactly what is needed in government, as far as I'm concerned. Gosh, I might not have the skill or expertise to do some of the things, but that energy is exactly what's needed.
I was very curious when she decided to run. I was curious about, what do you think you're going to achieve from the inside? Because that's impossible. It's impossible. And I don't believe that anything is impossible. So I'm being extreme in my language, that for someone to change government, which is inherently corrupt, from the inside with her light, I'm not quite sure where she was going. She can affect more change silently, from where she cannot be seen, with all of her power and all of her community, unless she takes her whole community and takes over.
And yet I had this sense when she did that, I think she knew she was not going to be the president. I mean, cognitively, consciously, she knew that.
What was her objective?
To me, when I think about issues like social issues and the government, it's an expression of who we are, and nothing will ever change. And why do we have to? I can accept that. I can just stand back and that there can be an oppressive society or an oppressive government, and I will still be who I am, as everyone else can be. And yet, if there's opportunity for things to be different in terms of the kinds of things you were talking about, wounds, what about healing of wounds that are deep in DNA of enslavement, of oppression, of exact, a determined purpose to eliminate whole races of people. Those kinds of things that are so deep, that kind of thing could be dealt with, needs to be dealt with if more people, I think more people, I guess I look at government as being like, if things can change, then more people may be open to listening to their own hearts, where there's not all this external, all this external coming in. Doesn't have to happen that way, but gosh, I think a lot of people don't really come to sense their own power and peace and happiness because of these kinds of things. And if it can be changed, then by God, change it. Do the work that can be done. So anyway, magic, yes.
Yes, for sure.
And then
no,
I think I saw this guy recently too, this girl. I told you about my green eye story. Guess who it was?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the sense I have with her coming out in the deck is like, do not fear. This is an apex predator. There is no fear. She moves without fear in the darkness. And they're not to be destructive like so many people think about this, but to move without fear, to not be afraid of the little weirdo kid running through the apartment complex, what people will think of him, or of what people will think of somebody who says, you know what, my joy is to write and to communicate and to speak and to do poetry or whatever. And well, how do you make money from that?
Mm.
I don't know. You know what? I did do a job and I do have some money. And no, it's not the kind of money some people want. Uh, but you know what? Fear, no fear. And there's this, and she has assured me so many times, you do not worry. I am here. I'm circling. You don't always see me, but I am there. I'm circling. And I think that could be true for so many. But there she was. This one.
Gosh. Yeah.
And the last one was a shock to me. But it makes me, it helps me to reconsider myself, and it helps me to reconsider the collective bigger picture too.
Yeah.
The sorcerer.
Oh, wow.
So while there is this energy associated with the sorcerer that many would construe as very negative and dark, it does have to do with the shadow aspects of me. And I think shadow aspects of the collective too. And we need to be aware. And when I look in the book, because I did look at the book for this, as I looked at this card, and it says, and I don't know how much I totally give total credence to this, this is the source of dark power. The sorcerer represents the destructive aspect of the human psyche and the self-centered behavior that harms others. It symbolizes the unconscious beliefs and ideas that foster separation, conflict, and scarcity. And that's the part that I can see that it does. It could be those kinds of energies, but in me, and not necessarily that I'm consciously seeking to work towards others or hurt others or anything like that. And I believe I'm responsible. I have at least come to a point, obviously not always like this, but at least come to a point where I accept the way I feel and respond, and I don't need to blame others to justify myself or my lot or condition in life. And so I don't know, but I do know that with the sorcerer, and I would be interested in how you feel about this. I'm not even going to say what I do know. How do you feel about this card, Chrissy?
I'm getting some lovely messages with this. It's about the archetype. So the archetype is coming to me to say, wait, okay. It's going to come back to the right use of light and matter. So the archetype we'll call the sorcerer, the shadow walker. So the part of us that walks in the shadow, because there's ancestral wounding, if we collectively call it the ancestral wounding, and that can play out in many ways. So the sorcerer can become, wow, I'm just going to say it, a demonic life source feeder. All right. So if we go to Harry Potter, that would look like a Death Eater that sucks the soul out of us because we are responding to the part of us that walks in shadow using shame, guilt, rejection, abandonment. And these are all typical collective wounds. Or we can turn and face the sorcerer and we can say, I can see you. What is it I need to learn today? My lesson today. How can I bring light to this? Is there any chance I can even bring love to such a deep wound? But to come into adult with it. When we respond in child, then we're going to lose power in that. When we move into adult and address it in the what if energy, what can happen here? Well, I sense it will just start pouring in, and then we pay attention.
Thank you for bringing those questions out, because those were that all of your leading to that had not come to me, but those questions were the ones that I responded with this morning.
Yeah, you know, because when I do shadow work with clients, there's never been an exception to this in 15 years. When we talk about, I'm going to use the word demon because it's such a great word.
Yeah.
demon. So I've done a lot of work with soldiers, and soldiers use the word demon. Oh, how you doing? Oh, fighting my demons. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is combative language. We use combative language. Beat. I will beat my demons. And if I can get a client, any client, into a space where we can invite this in. And obviously it depends what level of development people are at. I work at all sorts of levels, but if I can get a client into a holding space where we can bring the demon in and move this into receptive and accepting. And that's all this has to do. So this would be the me as the client, receptive and accepting. But what if? It's the first thing that comes in. But what if? But it's a demon. What the hell are we doing? That's all that's needed there. And now we wait. That's it. We've created the container. And what happens is, one specific case a while ago was this, because this is very often the rejected self. This comes in as like a big black ghoul. And as it moves towards the client,